I would like to remind people is, we all discriminate. Grief doesn't. It will touch every person. Mark my words, it'll touch every person at some point in your life, and it'll show up differently. It could have been a health issue, it could have been a relationship issue, it could have been a job issue, or death, right?
Mm.
So if you don't understand something, either ask or say, I don't know what to say. I
Hi, everybody. I am with Sweta Vikram. She is an international speaker, best-selling author of 14 books, award-winning entrepreneur, a certified grief coach, trauma-informed yoga teacher, adjunct professor, and doctor of Ayurveda, who is committed to helping people thrive on their own terms. And her latest book is The Loss That Binds Us: 108 Tips on Coping with Grief and Loss. Oh, yeah. I've ordered it. It's unfortunately taking it a while. I can't wait to read it. And as a trusted source on health and wellness, most recently appearing on NBC, NPR, and iHeartRadio, and Radio Life Force, and in a documentary with Deepak Chopra. Sveta has dedicated her career to writing about and teaching a more holistic approach to creativity, productivity, health, and nutrition. Her work has appeared in the New York Times and other publications across 9 countries on 3 continents. She lives in New York City with her husband and works with clients across the globe. And she also teaches yoga, meditation, mindfulness to survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. And today we're exploring how grief lives in the body and how we can move through life's biggest transitions with grace. Oh my gosh, Sveta, it is such an honor. I am so privileged. Our audience is so privileged for your presence.
thank you so much, Natalie, for the warm welcome and your generous words. I am so excited to be here because the conversation that we intend to have, I don't think we can talk enough about grief. And I don't think we can have enough holistic ways to approach grief. The entire world is grieving right now. Very often we think grief and we think it's end of life. Yes, it's that. But a heartbreak, loss of health, loss of job, so many reasons where people experience loss and it creates grief. And then you're told there's a hierarchy. Oh, it's just a job loss. At least your so and so is alive. At least you have so and so. I think these conversations are necessary to educate, to raise awareness, and to remind people to be empathetic because we've become unkind as a species.
Mm, mm. Exactly, and I think it's the most pivotal time where we are. I mean, whatever continent you're on, whatever country you're on, we are so connected, so switched on that we never really have been as a species or a culture to have these experience of just receiving news updates or receiving so much heartache and pain. Like, what does that do to our physiology?
Yeah. Oh, grief, emotional well-being, yes, but physically, I've had clients who've said that they couldn't move because the physical pain was so intense. So there's one kind, and Ayurveda addresses this differently, where the lack of motivation or procrastination, or that simply put, I want to sit on the couch, binge watch something on Netflix, be face down with a pint of ice cream. That's one way of grieving, right? Or grief finds you. I wouldn't say people choose to be that way. That's not fair.
Mm,
But there's the other kind where you feel physical pain because grief reduces your immunity. It increases inflammation. It puts you at a risk of so many illnesses physically, but also including cardiovascular, but also mental health, right? When we think anxiety, depression, and the conversations are so necessary because we all need to be our own advocates, which also means being okay with asking for help. Yeah, sure, talk to a friend, talk to a family member. But you know what? That might not be enough for a lot of people. Some people might need more than that. And so, physiologically, these changes where a, a client of mine mentioned 4 years after they had lost their father, whom they were very close to, come Christmas time, broke down completely because
mm,
it's after 4 years the intensity of absence hit. But that also led to like extreme congestion, lungs, winter season. Ayurveda will tell you lungs is the seat of kapha dosha. She was in kapha season. All of that. So it can really make you sick. So it's not about, oh, this has happened. This is the timeline we move on. It's very important to get to the roots, because grief never leaves us, Natalie. It just changes shapes and forms. And we need to be equipped as individuals, as a society, to be able to navigate it.
Mm. And I think that's so true is that we think grief is just sadness, right? It's just this thing that is here and it's just going to last or it's never end or it happens or then we try to withhold it. But it's a living, it can be fiery, it can be anxious, it can be numbing. I think you speak a lot about. So going back to that Ayurvedic lens, how might each dosha express grief differently?
I love this question so much. So thank you for asking it. I think with Ayurveda, it just makes you more compassionate because it's rooted in self care, right? You can't pour from an empty cup. It's just not a mantra or a proverb. Ayurveda really emphasizes on that. So the way I would look at doshic imbalances, when you think of someone who can't keep their mind shut, right? They can't sit down. They're unable to sleep. They might be navigating anxiety. These are all signs of anxiety as well. Muscle twitch or constipation, that's your vata dosha. Vata is light, it's mobile. When it comes to a kapha dosha imbalance, is what I was talking about earlier. This person who doesn't, we've all known or maybe have been in a situation where we are grieving, where you're just not motivated to do anything. The motivation is to find that solace, and there's no judgment there. We are all trying to survive, right? The judgment comes in when you don't take care of yourself. So the judgment is coming in from you, not from me as a practitioner. So this might be the person who's not willing to move, doesn't want to exercise. They might overeat or overdrink or create binging habits. That's your kapha. Because kapha in balance is your 2 a.m. friend who you call, but kapha out of balance is there's an excessive sense of attachment and hoarding. So you see, you're hoarding the emotions, but you're also hoarding food. You might be holding on to the articles of this person who's deceased. So it can show up in different ways. Then you have your pittas, where they're the doers. At a funeral, at a wake, in a family crisis situation, they get everything done. But to the point of burnout,
Mm,
because being busy in a healthy way is one thing versus being busy because for the sake of being busy can lead to burnout, can lead to chronic stress. So pitta out of balance is also that person who snaps easily, right?
mm,
People walk around eggshells on them. They might get a heartburn or GERD or acid reflux, diarrhea, skin rashes. So what Ayurveda will tell you, our mind, body, and consciousness or spirit or soul, however people want to term that, they're all connected. So the traits, the imbalances are showing up in different ways.
mm,
And so when you start to see that, we stop asking questions like, why can't he or she sit still?
mm,
Or I'm a very high pitta individual. So people are like, oh, you're so strong, you get things done. It's not a choice. Someone is dead. Someone I loved a lot. It's also my Ayurvedic, it's what are my traits, for lack of a better word. I know how to function in crisis, but the challenge becomes I need to know when to pause.
mm,
And that's where Ayurveda can come in handy. Not the excess of nothing is good for anyone. And same thing with kapha individual. Instead of saying, oh, you're a couch potato, can we not do the name calling? Can we
mm,
identify, work with an Ayurvedic practitioner? Can we identify the imbalance?
mm,
And I worked with people in grief coaching using the Ayurvedic lens, and it was recognizing that imbalance. For some people, I would say, you need to talk to a therapist. That's not my job. But I can help you with diet and lifestyle. And when we make these habits, right? And Ayurveda is very much about habits over motivation. So creating these better habits for someone who has that kapha imbalance. Can you take out a pair of sneakers and socks and your workout clothes at night? So in the morning, don't lean into, do I want to do this? No. If you're in a kapha imbalance, you'd want to be face down in pecan pie or potato chips. You don't ask yourself, you just do it. And that's very Ayurveda and yoga practice, abhyasa.
mm,
So I think it's identifying, but then also working with someone to find solutions instead of taking on that pressure. Oh, I need to fix everything. When you're grieving, everything feels like it's out of control. So we all get into survival mode. So there is no judgment. So
mm,
seeking that help can bring back what you need or what you're lacking instead of seeking that in the wrong person, in the wrong room. I think Brené Brown says this beautifully, right? Like a story, and I'm paraphrasing her genius, is there's no shame left to a story if we know who to share it with.
Mm,
And I think that's what Ayurveda has been talking about. Like knowing whom to talk to is key. And you will know that if you're connected to yourself, if you're not just attaching yourself to external forces, people, situations, circumstances, thinking, I need to be validated, people need to understand me. So I think it just all comes back to the self, starting with a capital S.
Coming back to the self with a capital S, I feel like we're speaking a lot about this because there's been such a movement about self-care and self-love, but from a
Right.
consumerist perspective. But I think
Mhm.
that's what Ayurveda does so well, is it's self-love as a life practice. You can't treat others.
It does.
Mm,
And also making it sustainable, Natalie. Sure, going to get a facial once every other month is one form of self care, but can it really sustain you for 2 months, given what's going on in the world? How can we make it sustainable, accessible, affordable,
mm,
and helpful on a daily basis? And I think that's the beauty of Ayurveda. It empowers you, where those 15-minute things that you do can sustain you for 5 hours.
mm. And as you're speaking, I can't help but think about this blanket term that we use for depression, you know, how a diagnosis from depression is, these things that you spoke about with unmotivation and procrastination for a kapha, for example, or a pitta is I've just got to get on with it, and then that's an ADHD diagnosis. So how our Western medical platform, our culture likes to diagnose something for a pill and an ill. But I think we think grief is something, relating to death. But I know you speak about grief as is change, these micro deaths
Yes.
of a loss of some form of relationship or a job change, which can certainly lead to depression, but it's not
Yes.
an illness. So I wonder if you could speak about maybe this about is how grief is part of our lives and it's honoring the changes of these micro deaths.
I am so grateful that you're addressing this in our conversation because people carry a burden. I've had a speak on grief and I've given talks even at cemeteries where they have a grief workshop or done a book reading and things like that. And people have almost been apologetic. My loss was not like yours. It was just, I'm like, stop explaining your grief. It would be so petty if I can't hold space for your grief.
Mm,
Who am I to say what your grief represents and means to you?
mm,
And I think that's what it is. Like what you said, loss of a job. And I've had people say things like, oh, they ended their marriage. It was a divorce. It was a mutual choice. And I'm like, just because something is ended doesn't mean it doesn't cause pain. So that is grief. It's the end. Whether you chose it or you didn't, the pain is there. And can we just pause for a second and hold space for that? Or even with health, people, I have clients who have chronic illness. They can barely go out to get a coffee to see a friend. There might be a month they haven't stepped out of their apartment. That is grief,
mm,
right? That choice was taken away from you, or the end of health as you knew it. The intention is, and the hope and the optimism is, there'll be a version two. But until such happens, it's that loss. So
mm,
grief, I think, is the response to any kind of loss. Or think about it, Natalie, we're adults. We've all had relationships that have ended. And now I use the word instead of end, transform. So there needn't be like this angry exchange of things or I never want to look at you or blocking things. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. But very often in adult relationships, now it's what our lives are just parallel. And it's so much of an effort trying to bring it back to what it was. That magic moment is gone. And it might come back to that. And I say this especially for friendships. But that doesn't mean the grief isn't there. If you had this memory of sharing your lunch with a friend in fourth grade,
mm,
and you barely talk to each other once a year now, your lives might be in different places. Who you've become might be in a different place. I say this to a lot of my clients who are on the spiritual path. It's beautiful, but it's very lonely because half the people will not be able to relate to you. It doesn't make it bad, and it's not, let's not put the pressure on our relationships to be able to understand this path that has chosen us or we've chosen, but that doesn't mean you can't grieve what you've lost. So I think it's very important for people to understand grief is just the response to any kind of loss. And none of us have the right to judge what that loss means to somebody else. It could be a neighbor you were very close to.
Mm,
They represented, you know, what a family was never there. Or also speaking on the side of the assumption that when someone passes away, we romanticize their end, right? Like we only talk about the good things, especially at the start. But what if you didn't share a healthy relationship? It could have been toxic, abusive. You didn't know that parent or that sibling, whatever have you, right? How difficult is that? Living in a world which just expects you to be full of guilt, and there is, of not knowing that person who passed away. But telling them their grief doesn't matter because now you don't know how to honor the person who's passed away.
mm,
So, again, can we just be a little bit more kind and compassionate? It is hard enough to navigate grief. Can you imagine how much harder it is for someone who has complicated feelings about the person who passed away?
mm,
And another thing I would like to remind people is, we all discriminate. Grief doesn't. It will touch every person. Mark my words, it'll touch every person at some point in your life, and it'll show up differently. It could have been a health issue, it could have been a relationship issue, it could have been a job issue, or death, right?
mm,
So if you don't understand something, either ask or say, I don't know what to say.
mm,
I appreciated that when I had lost my dad or and my father-in-law within 2 days of each other, when people would say, I don't know what to say. But the minute you say, you're so strong, I know you've got this, I feel like, oh, you've dismissed me. You don't want to hear my side.
mm,
And that's very alienating. So silence is a beautiful form of support. Know that.
mm. Wow, gosh, you spoke about so many things there, but I just want to touch on what you spoke about there with death. I think, well, you're based in New York and America, and I'm based in the UK, so I have that experience of how British people handle situations, which is
Hmm.
awkward ignorance around some things and avoidance of emotional
Okay.
issues. And I certainly noticed this to be true with death. And I've experienced it before where when I was much younger, but dear friends' parents died and it's awkward. You don't know how to support them, do you? And then I think I then finally had the courage to ask, how can I support you? What do I need? Rather than this awkward silence. And, as you say, no one is ever going to escape death or grief. So, how can we have those really uncomfortable conversations with each other? What does somebody who you have certainly gone through, experienced death and grief very closely, and I gather that this has transformed your career. So, what can we do to support somebody who is grieving death?
I think one of the first things would be for people to know that grief, like you touched upon that, Natalie, grief transforms us. Grief will show you sides to your personality that you didn't think exist because you've never been tested on that level. That part of your quality. They say like a mom will push a truck to help her baby survive.
Mm,
And this is the mother who doesn't even lift 5 pounds in the gym. So we all have these strengths and we all have these weaknesses in our personalities, which grief will highlight, right? So when somebody is grieving, don't assume they are the same person they were before grief hit them because they are navigating these changes as well. And also depending on who and what you're grieving. For me, my grief was so different when I lost my mom versus when I lost my dad, because with dad gone, who was I? Am I sitting at the big kids table now at the family get-togethers? What's my connection with the land of my ancestors, which is India? All of those questions, right? So I am navigating so much. I don't know what I need. So but what really stood out to me was friends who were like just thinking of you. What do you need? Or sending a funny meme, or sharing a memory of my dad, or my friends were very close to my dad, sharing a picture of them with him.
mm,
So it might have made me emotional, but also reminded me how loved he was.
mm,
So there is no recipe for it. Just being a human being
Mm.
and not expecting, oh, the thing that really angered me was tokenism. I've checked in once, check, let's move on. That's now how grief works. It took me months to even figure out. It's only when I started working on this book that I realized the plethora of emotions that I had. Because, when you've had two unexpected deaths 2 days apart, one day apart from my mother's ninth death anniversary, that's a lot to process in two different cities. There were people from three different countries there, right? It's a lot to process. And then you come back. I land in New York and I take out my phone to call my dad. And I realize, oh, I'll never had this. I'll never have this. So there's so much is changing that a griever doesn't know what has hit them. And you won't know for years to come. So yeah, just be human, just be kind and be honest. I loved it when my friends said, I don't know what to say.
Mm.
And this was like a double whammy. So it was almost like, are you joking this happened? That kind of a thing. So that silent support is also great, but yeah, the frustrating bit is the tokenism. If you don't know how to navigate grief, it's unfortunate because everyone will be hit with it. Just ask, but don't pretend you care and then gaslight someone, because multiple disappearances is much worse,
Mm.
right? Like you've been this person, you've always hung out, gotten your meals together, whatever have you, or a family member who's been a part of your parents' extended life. And when you don't ghost people,
Mm.
because in that moment you just wonder, did I do something wrong? So you almost, there were moments where I was like, it's almost like you're taking the onus on yourself for these. What happened? So these deaths happen, and now you think you don't want to be around me, which is really pathetic. Just
Mm.
communicating, I am so uncomfortable with this, I don't know what to say, is very different. Again, being transparent and honest, because no one expects you. Life doesn't come with a grief manual.
Mm. Mm.
And we're going on this whole roadway of grief, and there are twists and turns and signals and all of these things. So just being honest, being human, being kind, a griever will always remember it. And people don't realize that. They think this happens to others. I don't know of anyone else who's been in that situation that we've been in, but I know my close friends are like, they are on that alert, like, oh my God, if this can happen to you, it can happen to any of us. So just being more empathetic. You
Mm.
don't have to personalize anyone's story, but just living in awareness that, pardon my French, happens to the best of us.
Mm.
And it can happen when you're least expecting it. We were not expecting these two deaths at all, or my mom's. All three happened when life was happening.
Mm.
So just be human about it. You can be curious about it,
Mm.
but just be honest and human about it. Yeah, I can't emphasize that enough.
Mm. It's that true remembering our biggest superpower as humans that we forget is that our empathy, like that is
Yes,
the highest attribute that you can have as a human, but we do forget it, don't we? In order to.
we do. And we think we need to be, either there are people who just ghost you, or then there are people who try to over communicate.
Mm.
The person who's grieving might not have the bandwidth
Mm.
to handle phone calls and messages that have nothing to do with the funeral, the wake, the people in that moment.
Mm.
So don't personalize like, oh, I wrote, but he or she never wrote back. It's not about you.
Mm.
So that's the other thing. In yoga, we talk about the ego, right? When we want to help others, is it a genuine reason or is it about us?
Mm.
It's the same thing here. Check your ego. Because, like, I was very candid. I had conveyed this to my husband and my brother. I cannot handle phone calls right now.
Mm.
My close friends, I was talking to them because they're my support group, right? That I could be candid. I said, we are all grieving right now. Two families, like I said, two cities, 2 days apart. There's so much going on. My energy needs to be focused for the people who need it, including myself.
Mm.
And the grief was so nuanced, Natalie, because it's my brother and I, obviously, with our families, no parents left. And then my husband, he has a mom left. So his grief is different than mine. And when someone reaches, oh, I've been trying to reach out, we are not making plans on a Saturday night. Just be, it's not about you. And I think that's what it is. And because of social media, which I love, but I think people have gotten used to instant gratification. Don't project yourself onto someone else's grief.
Mm.
And I know friends who have told me for 3 months they didn't respond to anyone. And I was like, more power to you. For me, it wasn't that. It was just until I'm a high focus person. So in that moment, my focus was what needed to be done. It's not platitudes.
mm,
So don't share platitudes, don't expect platitudes, and just everything is not about you.
mm,
So be empathetic, be human, and give space. Just let them know I'm here whenever you're ready. And just because they're not ready doesn't mean they don't like you. It's not that dramatic. They just don't know what to grapple with their reality. Can you imagine waking up, both your parents dead, and you don't know who to call and tell them, I don't know what to do? You've lost that connection forever. And when the drama angle comes in, it's come on.
mm. Wow. I'm so sorry that you experienced that and so grateful for for what you've become after
Thank you.
each death, each grief, each experience. So I wonder, how did you handle your grief? And I suppose this has been the template, or you created the template for your work of the 6 stages of grief, and then your latest book, which is The Loss That Binds Us, 108 Tips on Coping with Grief and Loss. And I know 108 is a very sacred work in Indian spirituality, Hindu spirituality. So I wonder if you could maybe share about that.
Absolutely. I think any kind of life is all about choices. And when we are hit with good news or crisis,
Mm,
eventually it's up to us how we
mm,
want to show up.
mm,
In that moment, we all just trying to survive. So I don't have anything to say about that. But eventually, either you perish with the ashes or you become something.
mm,
And for me, every time I've been hit with, and there have been way too many times, hard situations, it's like I truly believe the universe, God, life, energy, whatever you want to call it, is trying to teach me a lesson. If I don't learn it, I cannot grow. It'll keep hitting me in one form or the other.
mm,
So when my mom passed away 11 years ago, I was much younger, right? She was young. She was in her 60s, very young. Died suddenly. So I was just and angry and angry. And I was angry, like, how could you do this to us? Because it was the first time I had experienced such a tremendous loss, right? And then the anger was towards the medical system. Did you do enough? Anger was towards so many things, like, why? Like, she was hospitalized. I was on a plane. She died and I was midair. So, like, how could you not wait for me? So the anger was about everything which was out of control. I think, and that was grief, but then also became the gatekeeper of mom's stories, her legacy, and make sure my dad felt protected. No one asked me to do this, but I have always felt like I grew older by 40 years. In my 30s, I was older by 40 years when I lost my mom. Because it was just that sudden, and it made me realize you could have all these plans as one should, because that's life. It can be taken away so quickly. So you also have to live in the moment. I think that's why I've been practicing yoga for a very long time. That's when I started doing the yoga teacher training, because I was like, I need to go deeper in this to understand it's more than a headstand. It's more than being bendy. That's not yoga. Like, how do I find stillness? That excessive movement is not bringing me peace. How can I sit with myself and be at peace? So I think that's where it started. That's a choice. It could have been a substance, right? It could have been reckless decisions because people act out differently. For me, it was like life is too precious. My mom's death has taught me it can go away like this. So, whatever time I have on this planet, I want it to mean something to me.
mm,
So, I think for me, that's been the driving factor. And I'd gotten already pretty deep into my Ayurveda yoga work when my dad passed away. And because of my dad and my father in law's just the way that's happened, 2 days apart, it was again growing up overnight on a level no one should have to. But this time, because I had my practices, I was not untethered. Even when I'm also Reiki practitioner, so I was giving Reiki to my father. I was doing his pulse analysis, and I knew when it was time for him to go. You can tell from the pulse, right? So all of that mentally preparing you can never be prepared ever. But I was mentally preparing myself, he's going to go. This is not about me. So when my mom died, it was about me. Like, how could you do this to me? With my dad, it was like, what can I do to make his last few days comfortable on this planet?
mm,
So his dignity remains intact. 6 months later, you're like, oh man, why did I do that? Like, we should have just fought and he should have been here. Those are moments. But in that moment, it was always about him. What can we do so my mom in law feels safe and loved and not alone? What can I do for the family, be it my husband, my brother, their families, all of that stuff. So it became about others. And I think it was because everything was rooted in yoga and Ayurveda. I knew how to return home to myself. It took a while.
Mm,
The sense of home had been lost, but I knew how to return to myself. And even when we were going through this critical phase, obviously there's no hitting gym and 90-minute yoga practice, but my dad was on the 11th floor. I would take the stairs because I knew this was habit over motivation. No one is motivated to work out when you're losing the person, one of the people you love so much. But it was like this was a stress release. This also gave me moments, what I had vulnerable moments because my husband and I were shuttling between two cities, two ICUs, switching roles, switching places to be there for each other's families, right? That little movement down the stairs also gave me some alone time. As a person, as a personality, I'm very used to taking care of others. This was the moment where I took care of myself,
mm,
just reminding myself this place is going to be gone, this house is going to be gone, this connection is going to be gone.
mm,
So finding time to meditate, even if it was 5 minutes, or just sipping my chai quietly in the morning
mm,
alone and doing some breath work. So I think I was anchored. That doesn't mean I didn't feel the stages of grief, but this time the anger was different. The anger was about, you see how much people change when you've lost both your parents.
mm,
When one parent is still alive, a lot of people might still show up because there's representation from the older generation. In this case, for a lot of the elderly, they'll also, I mean, I have incredible aunts and uncles, but I also have the unpleasant ones, and I'm very candid about it because I think if they are hit with their mortality, it's like it could happen to them. And what they don't realize, it's so sad that my brother and I are the connection to my parents. You want to see them, it's us. Or also with friends who were like, oh, you're the Energizer Bunny. Oh, you come in. You're like so much fun. You light up a room. But when I was going through darkness, I wasn't a light for some people. And they were like, okay, we just need to reframe whatever this is. And I think so the anger was about, I felt like I was experiencing multiple losses, not just my dad or my father-in-law, but my identity. These relationships who I thought were my connection to India, they no longer exist.
mm,
2 years later, I am happier than I've ever been because, you have to clean up your life. And sometimes situations like these force you to do these deep, energetic, and relationship cleaning, which you otherwise wouldn't have because I'm not the type who likes to end things. And then like, I didn't want to displease my parents. Come on, like it's, how much does it matter? I don't live with them. I live separately. Like, how does it matter? Or these old friendships, so you've known each other your entire life.
mm,
It was thus just realizing really nothing ends. It just transforms. And if you're not aligned, you're doing a disservice to each other. But then it was also, Natalie, in writing this book, The Loss That Binds Us, it was also realizing none of this was written anywhere. People talk about the wisdom that they have once they are on the other side, which is where I am right now. I might sound very, oh, you are so good in your healing process. No, I've been through the gunk, and there are days I still might be triggered, but I've learned to accept it.
mm,
Like, I've learned to accept that we all have Jekyll and Hyde. We all have amazing communities. We all have terrible people in our lives. It's not a competition, right? It's also teaching people everyone grieves differently. The way I grieve versus how my husband grieved. We were grieving our dead fathers and father in laws in the same house
mm,
exactly 2 years ago. But how do you hold space without judging whose grief matters more?
mm,
To not have this hierarchy, to not have this competition, to not be childish about how someone shows up to grief. I'm an external processor, clearly. I have a book about grief. My husband is an internal processor. Doesn't mean his grief is not just as important or his process isn't. So be curious, but don't judge. The one last thing I will say is in this has also taught me to highlight your own BS. It's not always others, it's also us.
mm,
I have a tendency, a genetic tendency, I would say, to over deliver in every relationship. My parents were like that. My dad was the kind of guy when COVID hit, he was still getting stuff cooked and dropped off and people who were sick. And my brother and I would be like, what is wrong with you? We cannot make it to India if something happens to you. But that's the generosity of spirit. And I would like to say with a lot of pride, like my brother and I are the same way. We have big hearts.
mm,
So if I am over delivering, that's my problem.
mm,
I cannot expect someone, you would think it's courtesy. Large majority of the world is in survival mode. They're not thinking of courtesy. They're not even thinking of me when they take certain actions. So it's going back to that ego. It's not about me. So I scale back and I'm like, I cannot deliver in every relationship, and that's okay. So I want to save my energy for the people who are my people, who are my tribe. So I think my quality of relationships have become better. You cannot be there for 500 people. You just can't.
mm,
And I think these are lessons that grief teaches, but also how to be a better person. I know what hurt me when I was grieving. I never want to be that person to someone else
mm,
who's grieving. So you make time for the people who matter to you. Don't just say, oh, I support you. No, don't say anything. Just show up. So whether it's a friend launching something, someone's book signing, someone is heartbroken, someone is unwell, just show up.
mm,
That human connection is very healing. So I've become very particular about scaling down of who what my inner circle looks like, and knock on wood, I love them, but I don't have the bandwidth because I also have a family. I also have my own interests, my own health to take care of. So I feel like life feels more fulfilling. And that's also happened because in looking for everything all around after losing my dad, because I was looking for who else can be that person for me. And I was like, I am home and I return to myself. And in every day that I have on this planet, I just need to return to myself. Every relationship feels like a bonus.
mm. Wow. I just have to give that space. That was so beautiful. Yeah. Thank you very
Thank
much for
you.
sharing so much wisdom, and it goes really back to the simple truths of who we are and where we are all seeking, right? First, we start off in life as like sticking outwards and climbing the ladder and all of these shiny objects, right? And then actually, a lot of us get them and then we're not satisfied. And then, as you say, like life will always teach you what you most need to learn, and you'll keep getting hit until you receive the message or you're able to transform. And it sounds like that's really the opportunity, the great sadness and the trauma. And, you know, it's unfortunate that we have to experience that trauma, but we are on this life, on this earth for a very short time, short, wonderful spiritual relationships, but there's that attachment and clinging to things, and we can only really build that relationship with ourselves because that's who we'll be from the day we're born until the day we die. It's that relationship with ourselves and uncovering
Oh,
that.
that's beautiful.
Mm, mm. I guess in our previous conversation when we met originally, you quoted, and I love this, Dr. Gabor Mate, and he speaks about, or you shared a quote that trauma begins the moment we feel invisible. And I think that's really important because we always have a choice, don't we? So, what has your experience been with invisibility in grief, or even identity as well? Maybe not this experience that you speak about, but in your life and in other traumas to current date.
Did talk about grief begins when we feel invisible. And when you look at the numbers, Natalie, it's no surprise more women have autoimmune diseases than men because being made to feel invisible, it happens more to women.
Mm,
Yes, when we look at the world, ethnicity, cultures, races, all of that is happening. But if we focus on gender for our conversation, why are women getting sicker in that sense when you think of it? And I've noticed that in terms of the patriarchy or the gender bias that comes in even during the grief, it's people are visiting. So when this happens in India, people get together, they're always visiting, they're in and out. And it might sound rude saying this, but it's also exhausting. I feel like it's a better system here in the West where you have between so and so time
mm,
because the person who's grieving, they're depleted. They need to be with their grief
mm,
because then everyone leaves and then there is absolute emptiness. But even amidst all that, when you have so many people visiting, you're still thinking of feeding them. If a woman has a little kid and the child is hungry, she's still thinking the men are not responsible for that. So that was also something that stood out to me. I remember when my mom had passed away, right? A few months later, like my brother and I, we went back to India because my dad wanted to be in New York with us for the 1 year death anniversary. So we said, we'll come down for the 6 month and we can do a little ritual puja and all that stuff. And I remember getting really angry at that dinner. And I said it like, what is it that the men are sitting and the women are serving? I'm not here to serve you. And I think they were like taken aback. Then I'm like, this is nonsense. We just had a ritual. Older people, I get, I respect that. Like if the elderly are sitting, I'm happy to serve them. It's their time to take the seat and I'm happy to. But if you're my age, I don't care what your gender is. You're moving your butt and you're helping. So, but like, but now I think 11 years later, I don't approach that with anger. So that's what time has taught me to be assertive without being angry. We get angry because we feel invisible. No one is hearing me. Like they're not seeing I'm doing this. I am jet lagged too. They're just expecting because the conditioning is the woman will do it. But now that doesn't work because I just am assertive about certain things. So I've learned over the years. And every time that they say, oh, she's this or she's that to another woman, a woman is feeling invisible. It's as simple as that. And that's triggered a trauma. It might come out in different ways for different people. When I was younger, this is what would happen. I would just explode. I was like, why didn't you say sooner? I shouldn't have to say it. Aren't you another human being? Why don't you get it? And so I think it's just also educating people about that. It's not a woman's responsibility to take care of others when she's grieving. Can we all come together as a community? So to even have those conversations, like the automatic assumption, oh, the guy will organize. No. Can we come together, play to our strengths? In my case, I am the nurturer in a relationship, so I'm happy to do this. But what if I didn't like to cook? Don't just assume this is what I will do. I have friends who really don't like cooking and they've figured out their balance. In some homes, the husbands cook. And great. It's cooking is a form of self-care. No matter who cooks, eating home cooked meals will only do your financial, mental, physical health good. But the assumption shouldn't be the man will provide, the woman will nurture. And I think that becomes where you can grow. The world might be as progressive as it is, but the minute there's grief, the old roles come back to play, patriarchy seeps in, gender bias seeps in, and I think people need to have these conversations. And maybe it'll be different for the next generation. I hope so, at least. Where it seems even more men are very aware of these nuances, at least from the conversations that I've gauged. But it'll be tested when crisis hits. Under smooth circumstances, we can be whoever we are, we choose to be. But when crisis hits, what's your conditioning? I think that's important. And I think it's making people sicker because where is that space for the woman to grieve if she's thinking, have the 50 people eaten? And or even holding space, right? Like for me, my husband is a great guy. When my mom passed away, and knock on wood, he understands my grief can be loud. And by loud, I feel it. This is how I am. And he always says, we are different people and we need to hold space for that. But I also know friends where one partner has both parents alive and the other one has lost a parent, they don't get it why Mother's Day or Father's Day might be feeling difficult to this person. So I think these conversations are very necessary because it's making that woman sick, where she has to pretend to be okay. She has to pretend to show up and celebrate this thing. She could still be doing that if you could hold space for her grief that she might be missing a parent. So this is where the invisibility, her grief doesn't become invisible just because a parent has been or sibling has been, gone for 5 years. If anything, the intensity grows up because you're watching your kids and your kids will never get to know that grandparent or that uncle or that aunt. And again, goes back to that invisible thing that, oh, a woman wear a cloak, let's just go about it. And I wonder if roles were reversed, would it still be the same? I don't think so. A woman would hold space. What can I do for you? It's Father's Day or it's Mother's Day. You might be missing. So can we do a ritual for those you've lost? And then we celebrate. I don't think many men think like that. And it's very convenient to say, oh, we just didn't think that way. No, empathy. Again, empathy. Awareness is high. If you want to, it's all about choices.
It makes me think of just a very common example going to that polarization or the difference between men and handling grief. I'm not speaking about death, but with relationship breakdown, I think generally speaking for a woman, her whole world comes collapsing down and she honors the emotions and she grieves and she builds up and moves on. She faces it.
Right,
And then life goes on and, she lives her life. But in the opposite of a man, he avoids it, he distracts himself until when he's finally able to process just a little bit of the grief, and then he'll always come back when it's too late. But when you're dealing with grief in a relationship or career change or every different part of grief, I think the women who has that emotional sensitivity to honor it in the moment, it's it's really different. And I think certainly what you mentioned about autoimmunity in women is at its most highest, and it's like that. What does autoimmunity? It's like the repression of yourself, where your own body is attacking itself.
right.
And how does that happen? By like holding something in and moving on, like you say, like you have done with your work.
Because people are not holding space. She's too much.
Mm,
She says too much. Oh, she shuts down. She's overdramatic. She's this. When you start labeling people, they shut down. When no one holds space for you to share, you shut down. And what is shutting down? Making yourself invisible.
mm, mm,
It's not what you want, but you don't have a choice.
mm,
And so, to your point, that's what autoimmune, your body starts attacking you.
mm.
It's danger everywhere. There's no safety. If there's no safety in that emotional safety in the people that you're around, the body also thinks it's danger, right? It's stranger danger and starts attacking you.
I think that's really important to name it, is that when we're embarrassed or anything happens, we shut down. But what does shut down that's minimizing ourselves? It's like invisibility. I think that's really important. I've just kind of had an aha moment of what that really represents, that. And I think it happens so often for women, but we don't even acknowledge how many times in a day do you minimize yourself and become invisible? I mean, I know certainly for me, it does happen every day. So I think that is
Right.
so.
Sometimes for peace, sometimes to just be, sometimes it's a childhood trigger where you've been told, what do you know?
Mm, mm,
And so it might be a at something, a comment at work that triggers you, and then you shut down. So we don't even realize this conditioning over generations across cultures has trained us to shut down.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, absolutely. I can't believe we're almost at time. This is so sad. I have so many more questions for you and love to dive deeper. But I guess kind of really to summarize, what is that, our audience is women, and her daily rhythm is about honoring rhythms. It's moving away from, the linear way of doing things. All of really the things that we've spoken about. So I guess is what's a message that you could share with women that are moving through any type of transition right now? And sorry, I talk a lot. I asked three questions in one. I'm sorry, but like I think everybody, I just want to highlight. I know that just everybody is feeling like in hyper alert of what is happening in the global stage. It's like it could happen to us, or we're seeing, so many people, innocent people dying, and that if you have empathy, that is puts you on hyper alert. So I guess it's to summarize, what's a message that you could share with anybody going through transition?
Self care.
Mm,
Return to self care, whatever that looks like for you. And I know we've been told like drinks with the girlfriends or massages or shopping. Oh, no, that's not sustainable.
mm,
Return to what. So I'll give you an example. Like for me, I could miss anything but my pranayama, like the breath work. Because when you're agitated, it's hard to be on the mat. When you're disturbed about what's happening in the world, it is so upsetting. It's hard for the mind to shut down, to sit down, to meditate. But when I do the breath work, I'm just doing the breath work, but the breath is working for me and it automatically shuts my mind so I can do everything else about the day. So find that one thing that really works for you. walking. So many of us just like to disappear into nature, right? So even if it's like a cup of tea, or that you want to sit by the window, watch it, watch the sunrise for 5 minutes and have that cup of tea, journaling at the end of the day. So, like, making this is what is sustainable, right? If you commute, on that commute, can you connect with the best friend and just talk about what am I cooking today, which has nothing to do with the roles that you play. So, first get to know yourself. That's self care. Ask yourself what you like, what you don't like, what your triggers are. Build a consistent self care is also building a sustainable community, right? Doesn't have to be 500 people. I've learned the hard way. Few people, but people who get you no matter what.
Mm,
And then the other thing I would say is communication.
mm,
Very often, and I say this from my experience, like I said, when I was younger, because I felt invisible, or I just assumed no one wanted me to be visible. It was both things, right? Even though I had a father who was a feminist, I was not raised like most women from my generation in Indian families. Yet I struggled with it. And I married a man who held space. But because of the societal conditioning, very often I just assumed you just don't want to hear it. So I would tolerate, and then go boom. And then, yeah, she's loud, she's angry. Then I got labeled, right? So it's no, even day one, start communicating what works for you, what doesn't work for you. People don't have to like it,
mm,
but at least you're not making yourself sick.
mm,
The number of women, Natalie, who have thyroid issues, throat chakra, we are not communicating.
mm.
Our root chakra is all over the place. Like, we don't feel anchored and grounded. So just think of it also holistically, that you need to speak your truth, but know the room you're in. Not everybody deserves your truth. And that is also self care. So on a daily basis, evaluate what you need. Three things today, follow through with it.
I really love that. And I do want to acknowledge that I want to say devastation of young women that I'm seeing with throat cancer being diagnosed in 20, and the amount of women with thyroid conditions. So yeah, I think it's so important. And I guess what you've said also goes back, because I am actually seeing a lot of people, witnessing them going through this stage of anger at the world,
Mm-hmm.
and also that they almost don't deserve to do self-care, or if somebody is prioritizing self-care, they will, that get angry at that, and maybe going back to your point, is that that's a stage of grief.
Yes, it is. Being to made to feel invisible is also grief. You've lost visibility. And what is grief? Loss. It's a response to any kind of loss.
Mm, wow. Oh gosh. Thank you so much. Such wisdom. This conversation, your work is so, so important, needed every single place. So, what are you offering right now? I know you're in the middle of launching your book. Where can people find you and connect and do all of the things?
Firstly, thank you so much, Natalie, for this conversation and your presence. It just makes things so much nicer. You can find me on my website. My name is Sweta Vikram. That's my website. I'm launching a podcast, which is
Yay.
it's an Ayurvedic podcast for leaders and how to use Ayurveda for productivity, to avoid burnout, chronic stress. It's called The Grounded Leader. It should be out in a few weeks. So just keep an eye out for my website. But in the now, what can you're more than welcome to grab a copy of The Loss That Binds Us. It's available on Amazon and other places where books are sold. But I have a freebie. The world that we are living in right now, there's so much chaos and violence and uncertainty. It's really messing around with the sleep cycle. So I created a free sleep guide, and I can share the link with you if you want to add it to
Please.
your show notes. And it is filled with simple Ayurvedic tips. So get the sleep guide, find simple ways which empower you, because everything that I talk about is leaning into what you have, not relying on others. So using those simple tips to improve your sleep cycle, because when we sleep is when we heal, whether it's your grief or a physical illness. So thank you so much for having me. It was amazing to be here.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Sita. Thank you.